Yeah, so thank you. I want to thank Alma for inviting me, but also Dr. Orr for connecting me to Alma. And so, wow, this is amazing. And I can't wait to see where you all will be a year from now. Just a year, or even less. You're going to be amazing. But really, when you talk about communications, right, the fact of the matter is you're communicating your values as well. And I don't know if you've thought about it, but maybe this will help you think about it. So, next slide, please. So, Alma gave me a list of possible topics to discuss, and these two resonated with me, right? So, talking about the ethics of Stratcom, but as well as the role of Stratcom in DEI, honestly. But personally, I've always been interested in ethics and philosophy, but particularly at the most basic level, how can you be a good person in the world and be a good citizen at that? Next slide, please. Now, if you were to look at some of the organizations or associations that I imagine some of your members are or will be joining, including the American Marketing Association, the Public Relations Society of America, there's an International Public Relations Association, another Global Alliance of Marketing and Communications. All of these organizations and other organizations as well ordinarily would list what their core values are, as well as code of ethics, right? So, for instance, next slide. What I've done is, based on those four, I put together their values. So in a way, when you think of it, it's also like individuals, organizations also have their core values. Because before you even come to the ethics, which we'll get to the next slide, these are the values that your field really is centered on. Integrity, right? You probably have taken classes on this way, so I don't have to go through this. But my point is that it starts with values. So first in the organizations that you're going to join, then we go to the next slide, please, which would be basically the code of ethics. And really, when you think of ethics, it's really about what do you do, how do you act as a person, as an organization. So the more the older organizations, the more developed organizations would have a code of ethics, for-profit, non-profits. And it really tells you how, as a marketing professional or a PR professional, you're supposed to act, right? And so it gives you guidance, so when you're in situations that might be problematic. So for instance, if you're working for a company, a country, I don't know, some group that might be controversial, what do you do? Right? So that's where all these things come in. So, next slide, please. So I have these questions, and don't worry, we won't go through all this. I know you've got your table talk, but I just want you all to consider, right? So, why are you in Stratcom? And I'm not talking about the job itself, but why? Why are you interested in communications, right? So, and what are your personal values and ethics? Meaning, what are your core values? Right? For some folks it will be social justice. For some it's about arts and beauty. So what are your values and how does that go into your personal ethics? And then, most importantly, do your personal values and ethics align with what you're doing right now? And there's a reason why I say this. Because from my own personal experience, I don't mind saying I've been in the workforce for 30 plus years, and I've been in the for-profit and non-profit space. But it took me a long while to realize that if what you're doing is not aligned with your values, you're not going to be happy. That's as simple as I can put it. I remember when I first came to the US, did very well, this was in the 90s, one of my first jobs running a small business. I was clearing over 6 figures. And, making tons of money, wearing all the designer clothes, etc., etc. I was miserable as bleak, right? But what it was, because it wasn't who I am. And it's not, I'm not being judgy, it just wasn't what I was, right? And and you'll understand in a second why that is. So, next slide, please. Now we'll go into DEI. And it is related to everything I'm saying. So whenever anyone asks me, I'd like to do DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. I want to get engaged in whatever capacity. These are the 3 questions I ask. Why are you doing it? What are your values? Why do you want to do it? Right? Then for whom? For whom are you doing it? Getting involved. And then how are you doing it? And I'd argue these are questions that you can also use in your own career, right? Ask yourself, why? Why are you here at Columbia right now? For whom and how, right? So let me just share with you my own story, and this will explain what I said earlier about the misalignment. Next slide, please. Oh, so the why for me. Why am I doing what I'm doing, particularly as Chief Diversity Officer? But I'm grateful to have lived long enough where even if my path was not linear, now everything I've done makes sense. Because I was like trying different things and what have you. But it is rooted in my why. So if you could please. Oh, okay. What's missing there? It's too bad because it was the cutest photo. Seriously, it was with me and my dad. You know, my late father. And so
try.
That's okay. That's okay. That's just as well. Just as well. No, but it was very, very like 70s. Like he was in his Belmont, and I was like, oh my gosh. But he was the one who taught me and my brother that to treat everyone fairly and equitably. So I'm from the Philippines, just like Eleanor, and I actually went to that school at Ateneo de Manila. So it used to be an all-boys school, but thank goodness they opened it to women. But so first I got my just sense of equality from my dad. But then from my Jesuit education, which you'll hear, like for instance, Dr. Fauci, he always attributes his sense of service for others because of his education with a Jesuit school. So that's something, whether you like it or not, we were, drilled into us, service for others. So that's why. And then finally, this photo, for those of you in Broadway, I shouldn't have turned my back. Hi, right here lies love, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have my issues, but never mind. But because
it's not my show.
No, and I'm sure there are a lot of critics who talked about how problematic it is. But if you want, by the way, a spectacular show, it is spectacular. It's worth every penny. So Here Lies Love is a Broadway show by David Byrne, so a white Western man, writing about one of the most historic moments really in the world. In 1986, there was a peaceful revolution in the Philippines, where we, the regular citizens, got together and ousted the dictator peacefully. So I was one of those students. That was me, French, right? And that's my good friend George, who's also in New York. But there, finally, that's when Ferdinand Marcos. And so anyway, as an aside, Here Lies Love talks about Imelda Marcos and Ferdinand Marcos. But anyway, moving on. But so that's my why. Right? Why am I doing this? Because it's my core values. This is what motivates me. And I'm just so lucky, as I said, to live this long, where everything I've done, everything I've studied, I'm able to do. As now as a professor here at SPS, but also as a Chief Diversity Officer. And I also do a lot of strategic advising to nonprofits in Asia, as well as in the US. So next slide, please. Oh, and here. So when I got to the US, so remember what I said earlier about the disalignment. So my first 10 years here, you're a new immigrant, you're just trying to find your way. I also came out as a gay man, so also just trying to figure it out. So I was really figuring out a lot of things. But it just took me away from my core values and who I was, which deep down, I'm a troublemaker. I'm an activist and an advocate. So it took me that time, like, what the bleep am I doing, to really think about it. And eventually, I went for a master's in nonprofit management. And then my husband and I moved to DC. And that's where I really, again, this activist came, suddenly it was, you're in DC. So I did a step hike when we were fighting for LGBT rights, particularly for marriage equality. And also that is, talking on behalf of, particularly for gay couples, whereby, one, we weren't allowed to marry. So this group in particular was saying, listen, if you're a straight person, or say you are, you can get married and then you can get your visa, right? But at that time, so many of us couldn't. But I was able to speak because I was documented. And so that's actually in front of the Capitol, and that's there, causing as much trouble as I can. So that's who I am, right? So that's now for whom? For whom am I doing this? So as CDO, next slide please. So it's for students, staff, and faculty. So just so you know, our DIA initiative here at SPS, right, was started in 2021, and I was the inaugural CEO. And really, what's unique about the initiative is that we try our best to be holistic, where we are looking at students, staff, and faculty. And this is where I was just telling Alma before it started, I really want to work with your group, because the thing is, here's the thing, SPS seriously has done so much already, right? But how many of you know what it is? And the thing with DEI, even if your organization, company, school, or what have you, has the best programs and trainings and workshops, but if people don't perceive that that is the case, that your organization and leadership believes in diversity, equity, and inclusion, then there's a bit of a disconnect, right? So that's why communication is very important. But anyway, so this is for whom I'm doing here at SPS. And it's not just me, by the way. There's an entire committee and all the folks at SPS, from Dean Eggers, all of us. Next slide. And then personally, so as I said, I've been here in the US now 3 years. And I am grateful. It's not a perfect place. There's no perfect country. But I'm proud to be called Filipino American and to be actually part of the story of America. But also we know that this country has a lot of issues, right? So that desire to help and change things. So that's part for whom I'm doing it, hopefully in whatever little way I can. And right now is being a lecturer here at SPS and also serving as CEO. And I think, and how do you do this? So when you're doing this work, diversity work, right? So first humility, because there's so much to learn. And I cringe when anyone says, oh, Erwin's a DEI expert. Please don't say that. Who is, right? Because it's in a way, while we've been struggling with diversity, equity, and inclusion, for as long as this country's been here, but particularly since the 60s, we're still learning. So it takes a certain humility. And I'd argue with anything, actually. If you get the leadership role, humility is the best task. Because then you know that you don't know everything, right? Oops. Then curiosity, joy. I forgot self-awareness. So if you don't know yourself, then how will you know? And I'm talking about being mindful of your thoughts and your actions. And we can go into a philosophical discussion. That's another topic of interest. But just curiosity. And finally, I cannot stress joy enough. Because the work, diversity work, when you just work in general is tough. It really is. But there's also so much joy in it. And just finding that in every day. So I will wrap up with a little bit of self-promotion here. So I did develop this course, which was taught at the first instance last spring. And it was really designed for cross programs in SPS. And it's looking at how do you practice diversity, doesn't matter, for-profit, non-profits, but looking at the different business functions. From clearly communications, HR, data, etc. So while it rests in the non-profit management program, because that's where I'm full-time faculty, it is open to everyone in SPS, and even last spring I had students from CIPA, from Human Rights. So in case you're interested, and I think that's it. Thank you. So we're working